Welcome to our gathering tonight.
Great campfire stories where people have called up and said that they may have been worshiping at the altar of the herb a little bit, and I thought, well, maybe that has something to do with your sighting.
Okay, guys, welcome back to this week's episode of the Grimerica Show. We're going to be talking with Jim Harold of the Paranormal Podcast and Jim Harold's Campfire a little bit later. But first, as always, how's it going tonight, Graham?
Hey, I'm doing good. I was thinking about where we're broadcasting from, like in the igloo east of the Rockies in the Great White North.
We're east of the Rockies.
And I was thinking about Dave and Thompson. Who's the Great White North guys? Bob and Doug McKenzie.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
I don't remember. I'm too young.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. And joining us this week, it's been a while, so we'd like to welcome back the one and only Red Pill Junkie.
How's it going, guys?
Good, buddy. Coming in loud and clear this week.
Yeah, you sound good.
Perfect.
So how you been? Long time no see. I know you've been busy at work and stuff.
Yeah, I've been a busy little bee. You know, there are some times when the Matrix gets a hold on you and won't let go.
Ooh.
Oh, I know the feeling. Graham's excited. So I suppose off the bat, we should take a minute and welcome some new countries to the Grimerica Empire.
Empire?
What's a friendly empire? I don't know. How else do you...
Every time you talk about some world domination, it sounds aggressive to me.
Yeah, delicious of grandeur, eh?
The same thing we try and do every week. Try and take over the world.
God.
No good?
Yeah, well, I don't know. We'll go with it.
It's conquered.
So what are these new friendly countries?
We'd like to welcome Nicaragua, which isn't too far from you, RPJ.
¿Cómo no? Claro que no. Bienvenidos, mis compañeros nicaragüenses.
There you go. Welcome from RPJ, I'm assuming. Then we'd like to welcome Georgia, the country, not the state. Iceland, which is kind of fucked up that it took us this long to get into Iceland. I'm surprised that we didn't. It seems weird to me. But anyway, welcome to Iceland. Your shit's pretty cool.
Welcome to all the beautiful people of Iceland.
Yeah, they got a good government and shit over there, too. They got a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Weren't they the ones that bailed out the people instead of the banks and put all the banksters in jail? I'm pretty sure that was them.
Yeah, there's a reason why they are among the happiest people on the planet.
And it's cold as fuck most of the time, so shit must be pretty good.
And it's a land of ice.
And then Mauritius. Mauritius?
Yeah.
Have you been there?
Very cool. No, I haven't been there.
And this one, I must say, is the first country that I've never heard of. And if someone would have mentioned it to me in conversation, I would have no idea what they're talking about. So it's Brunei Darussalam.
Brunei?
Darussalam.
I've only heard of Brunei, not the...
I just go by what it says on the Libsyn. Where's Brunei? Where is it?
It's in the Middle East.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Like it's officially the nation of Brunei, the abode of peace, is a sovereign state on the north coast of the island of Borneo in Southeast Asia. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that puts us in 81 now, and we still only have flyer pictures from 3. So I think we can do a little better than that, guys.
Yeah, we'll get into the flyer campaign a little later on.
Okay.
All right.
So what's new, Red? You got any juicy tidbits for us?
I have a few. I think we can begin with something that my friend and mentor Greg Taylor posted today on the Daily Grail. Something pretty cool involving scientific studies apparently confirming the human ability to sense the future before it happens, you know. So apparently there was a study in 2012 meta-analysis experiments from 7 independent laboratories over the last 35 years, which found that the human body can apparently detect randomly delivered stimuli occurring between 1 and 10 seconds in the future. So this is something like
the Sheldrake studies or whatever, right? Was it Sheldrake that did it?
Intuition.
Yeah, the term would be like presentiment or precognition, but it's like if an archaeologist were to mention Atlantis, it's the name that should not be named. So instead of presentiment, they prefer to call it predictive anticipatory activity, or PAA for short. But basically, it's the same. The body unconsciously is able to predict that some big event or some big stimuli it's going to be presented, and the bigger the impact of the stimuli, the bigger the presentiment.
Wow, that kind of wraps into a whole bunch of different things, like we were talking about with heart math, where or the random number generators are affected before a big event like 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, interesting. There's they use a very interesting analogy or metaphor to explain the phenomenon. Let me read this. A metaphor might help to provide an intuitive feel for this effect. Watching a river move past a stick. The metaphor works as follows. Imagine that the direction of the water's current is the conscious experience of the flow of time, or temporal flow. And imagine that an intrusion in the flow, which will be the stick, is an emotional, arousing, or otherwise important event. The largest disturbance in the water made by the intrusion is downstream. In other words, in the forward time direction, which is analogous to our conscious reaction to experiencing the important event. But if one examines the flow of water near the stick, one will also see a small perturbation upstream, anticipating the intrusion in the water downstream due to the back pressure. Similar to PAA, this upstream perturbation is a hint of things to come. It is not normally part of our conscious awareness, and as with disturbances in a flow of water, the majority of the effect of an intrusion is downstream of the intrusion. So it's interesting because maybe for the most of us, we don't have a really big stick, put in the flow, in the conscious temporal flow. But maybe some people are so sensitive that what most of us will only perceive unconsciously from 1 to 10 seconds, they may be able to get a sense of it maybe days or years before it happens.
Or can you work your muscle to grow your stick?
No, what you got to do, if you guys are having trouble doing it at this home, get a Q-tip or like a toothpick and just stick it in your ear and you'll see the future. The farther you stick it, the farther the future you can see.
So you're talking about some kind of trauma, imposed on the body, and that's actually something that some people think that it could increase your perception of these non-linear events, right? So maybe people who have had a near-death experience, or maybe suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, maybe they become more sensitive to this type of stimuli.
They have a bigger stick in the water?
Yeah, or they are more sensitive to the upstream currents.
Maybe psychedelics can do it too, because remember, wasn't it Stanley Krippner that had visions of JFK's death when he was on psilocybin?
Yeah, maybe the psychedelics helps you to color the water, the same way that, engineers used tints to color water and to analyze airflows in aerodynamic models. Mm-hmm. So it will become much more apparent.
Was there any idea of what it was? Was it the cells? Was it the organs?
No, this is very cutting edge science, you know. So far, the thing that researchers are agreeing is that all these studies were conducted with sufficient scientific scrutiny, you know. So they weren't biased. They were following all scientific rules. So the thing is that they are acknowledging that, you know, that the key observation in these studies, I'm reading here, is that human physiology appears to be able to distinguish between unpredictable, dichotomous future stimuli, such as emotional against BS neutral images or sound BS silence. This phenomenon has been called presentiment, as in feeling the future. Well, so basically they are acknowledging, you know, okay, so there is something here. There is some unknown physiological phenomenon. Where are the mechanisms to explain that phenomenon? That is a whole different matter, and it may even take, I don't know, decades or maybe centuries before we can ascertain that. Mm-hmm. But I think it's an interesting small step toward trying to move away from the current materialistic paradigm that, you know, your mind is only your brain, you know, your brain firing up neurons, and there is no such thing as precognition, as there is no such thing as presentiments, you know, all the things that people like Michio Kaku are buying, are selling right now. I don't know if you've heard something about his recent book, The Future of the Mind.
I was listening to it on MU. It's funny because I actually emailed Michio's press line today to try and line him up, but I'm pretty sure he won't respond. That'd be pretty cool, though.
Yeah, you never know. He might be wanting to sell his book.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was hoping for.
So yeah, it's almost like the science behind the gut feeling, eh?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have a gut feeling about something, and then it's kind of proving that there might be something to that.
There may be some evolutionary advantage to be among the people who have a stronger gut feeling. You know, maybe those are the people who, when they are maybe in a violent scenario, like in a war, you know, or hunting or something, if you have a bigger gut feeling, that might be the difference between, you know,
life or death. Yeah,
life or death. You know, maybe just seconds before a grenade hits where you are, you just have the gut feeling to get out of the way, run the opposite direction.
Because for me, in a spiritual sense, it's hard to tell the difference between negative self-talk or some sort of negative thought pattern compared to like an actual gut feel, right? Like what's coming from your heart and what's coming from your ego in the head, you know? Trying to separate the two can be tough.
Yeah.
It could just be spillover too from like subconscious fucking ability. Some people, you know what I mean? Subconsciously can maybe see the future, and they're like doing things to prevent their shit without even knowing it, dodging bullets.
Oh, okay. More like
and then it spills over.
More like an instinct?
Yeah, exactly. But a future instinct.
Yeah, maybe. It's all very speculative at this point, but it's fascinating nonetheless.
Yeah, that's a good one. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
What? Do you have anything else?
Yeah, we can talk about Mars if you like.
I always like to talk about Mars.
Yeah, Graham doesn't want to talk about Mars because he knows that he'll never travel to Mars. At least not on Mars One.
Not on Mars One.
You could reapply, buddy.
I could reapply. Yeah, I could just keep reapplying.
Yeah, until
40,
you hear
$40 every shot.
Yeah, until you hear like 1,000 or something.
Then they just disappear. Mars One just disappears off the face of the Earth.
Maybe I should have put more time into my application process.
What if Mars One?
Video?
What if all the money of Mars One was, you know, invested in bitcoins? with all the shit happening to Bitcoins, maybe that will be the end of that project.
Yeah, I'd like to get someone on to talk Bitcoins because I don't really know
for sure.
all about
well,
it.
we had somebody recommended to us from our artist friend Barry Hoon, so we'll follow up with that. Because I need to learn more about it too.
I think you guys have one guest coming up to the show, right? Who is very knowledgeable about economic scandals and all that.
Yeah.
A couple.
Yeah, a couple.
Like who?
Like John Perkins, the economic hitman, you mean?
He just, Red gives us a fucking lob ball and both of us miss it.
Come on, guys, pay attention.
Oh, okay. I didn't know you wanted to know who it was. Yeah.
Yeah, we got the economic hitman, John Perkins, and actually later on tonight we're interviewing Daniel Estolin, who's got quite a big background in the Bilderbergs and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's got a lot to say about economics too. That's going to be a fascinating chat.
Definitely. Yeah,
so,
and you should question those guys about Bitcoins. But getting back to Mars.
Yeah, that's kind of where I thought you were going to go. So
getting back to Mars. So remember in 1996 when NASA had this big press conference, even President Clinton talked about it, how they claimed that they had found evidence of like nanofossilized microorganisms inside a meteorite that they had found in Antarctica that came from Mars.
Yeah.
I remember that shit.
Yeah, but all of that kind of fizzled out after many scientific critics stepped in and said that there's no way that those type of features, microscopic features, were the result of biological activity. But nevertheless, the discussion is still raging on in the scientific community whether those type of evidence of features in Martian meteorites are evidence of past biological activity or not. So this week there was yet another claim from another Martian meteorite in which NASA scientists found other types of very interesting feature like tiny carbon-rich minerals, which they say could be the result of biological activity in Mars past. So Alan Boyle wrote about it on his blog on NBC News, Cosmic Log. And here you can see the microscopic images where you see what they are like, tiny like blobs that they say they are rich in carbon, and they could be the result of biological activity. So those blobs were caused by some kind of microbe.
Microbe snot.
A Mars probe.
Carbon snot?
Yeah, microbiological Martian shit or something like that.
Hey, did they ever get that Jade Rabbit thing going again?
I think it's pretty much DOA by now.
I remember it was going to be 2 weeks or something till the sun came up again, but I think that has passed. It's weird how you don't hear nothing. Like, I haven't heard fuck all about it in a while. I always wonder how we send all this shit to Mars, but we don't have a couple rovers. Like, if we would have put a rover on the moon when we first went there, we could have had that fucker like half checked out by now.
I think that NASA prefers to send rovers to Mars because there are more things to investigate over there. In terms of searching for water, searching for evidence of life in other planets.
So this carbon snot, is it a big deal? Is this a big find? Is this going to lead to something?
I think it leads to trying to strengthen the argument that yes, all these Martian meteorites, the things that NASA scientists are finding and that were initially dismissed as contamination from when the meteorite hit our own planet, like millions of years ago. Whenever they found something weird there and said, no, that's all the result of contamination. And yet these NASA scientists, they're saying, no, this is not the result of contamination. This is activity. These are features that happened when the rock was still on Mars. So then you need to explain it.
Oh, okay. Huh. So it could validate panspermia a bit?
Definitely, it could validate the argument that maybe life on Earth was somehow kick-started by the effect of Martian meteorites.
Yeah, it could also go right down the line of like what that new, I forget his name, that new fella that was saying that talking that life would have been, his theory is that life is everywhere, and we shouldn't be surprised to find life everywhere in the universe. Maybe it's not panspermia. Maybe it's fucking everywhere spermia.
Yeah, maybe
those ingredients are everywhere. It's just a matter of, so basically any planet that has the ability for life to take hold, it will.
Omnispermia.
Omnispermia.
Exospermia.
It's like jerking off over a big old ceiling fan.
Yeah, but then again, you are talking about, I don't know, microscopic life, right?
Yeah.
Which is a completely different matter from intelligent macroscopic life, like meaning us. Right?
Yeah, well, it's the beginning of it.
Exactly, the beginning of it, and maybe with any luck, and through evolutionary processes, those tiny blobs then get to turn into bigger blobs, and then into even bigger blobs, until finally something starts crawling out of the primordial soup, and then maybe in a couple eons later, they invent the internet and whatever.
Then they take over the world. And then they make moais and pyramids and shit, and then they make the internet. And then they destroy the world.
And then they legalize marijuana, and they stopped evolving.
So, yeah, that's interesting.
Hey, well, we got to run into, I'm anxious for this week's UFO quote of the week. We got some good feedback on it. I'm working on some effects for it, but we're not there yet. This is your first time here for our new segment, RPJ. It's not a very long segment, but it's gotten some rave reviews so far. So
yeah. No, I'm of course I'm happy to do it. So the RPJ will know of this quote. So will Leslie Keane, I'm sure. So the Air Force has arrived at the conclusion that a certain number of anomalous phenomena has been produced in Belgian airspace. The numerous testimonies of ground observations reinforced by the reports of the night March 30 to 31st, 1990, have led us to face the hypothesis that a certain number of unauthorized aerial activities have taken place. The day will undoubtedly come when the phenomena will be observed with the technological means of detection and collection that won't leave a single doubt about its origin. This should lift a part of the veil that has covered the mystery for a long time, a mystery that continues to be present. But it exists, it is real, and that in itself is an important conclusion. That's from Colonel Wilfred de Brouwer, Chief of Operations for the Belgian Air Force in 1990, following a spate of sightings over the country witnessed by hundreds of people. Many of the sightings were confirmed on radar.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Belgian UFO flap of 1989 and 1990.
Yeah, me too. Because I remember that from way back too. Actually, it was the year of my sighting.
Ah, really? So the thing about the Belgian wave is that some people in the UFO community speculate that maybe that was some kind of super secret American military craft that they were testing over Belgian soil.
Yeah.
That there are some problems with that argument. Even that Colonel, it is what the Brower or what is the Brower? He contacted people in the Pentagon, in the American government. He asked them specifically, "Hey, are you guys testing some kind of secret technology over here?" And they said, "No. And by the way, do you have any more information about that? Anything you want to share with us?" And you could say, "Oh, well, this kind of technology is at need-to-know basis, so the super secret black government, is aside or independent from the standard normal military personnel or procedures." But then again, you still need to follow this argument. I think, at least that's my opinion, that if they are testing secret technology over civilian areas, over highly populated areas in another country, you're talking about allegedly experimental technology. So what happens if that technology fails?
Yeah, you just gave your shit away.
Not only that, but you could also risk the lives of hundreds of even thousands of innocent civilians.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so either that technology is already perfected enough that it will pose no threats whatsoever to the civilian population if you are flying those things over their cities, or those objects belong to someone else.
The Bilderbergers. I think that was dropping off Bilderbergers at one of their meetings in Belgium.
I still maintain that those were legitimate UFOs. I mean legitimate. Non-human, non-human technology.
Yeah.
Well, and even I'm saying technology because I really
don't know who's driving.
I know, and also because I can't find a better term for it.
Yeah.
I allude that there was some kind of technology because I'm thinking that there was some kind of metallic craft. But even those assumptions that they were metallic, that they were craft, and they were produced by some kind of technology are only that, assumptions.
Maybe they're 3D printed.
Maybe. Have you heard to Richard Dolan on his recent interviews? The last one with Mysterious Universe?
Yeah, that's where I heard that, where he was talking about
did MU have him on before we got a chance to?
Yeah. And also Mike Clelland recorded an incredible interview with him last Sunday. I think he just posted it.
Cool.
Today. And man, you guys, everyone listening to this, please, after you listening to the Grimerica show, go to Hidden Experience, the Hidden Experience blogpost.com, and listen to the audio interview with Richard Dolan. It will blow your fucking mind out.
Yeah, right on. I can't wait.
Yeah, was that him that was talking about 3D printed shoes and shit that'll be alive?
Well, okay, so in Mysterious Universe, he talked about 3D printing stuff and maybe whether UFOs are actually some kind of locally grown, entities, using Earth DNA, like maybe human DNA, and maybe even combining them with, reptilian DNA or maybe insect DNA, so that will maybe explain all the reports of mantoids or reptilian-like entities. But the stuff that he was discussing with Mike was even better. Graham, you will love this.
Yeah.
So Richard has been practicing yoga for the last past year.
Ooh.
And he says that many of the assumptions he had when he began his career, studying UFOs, have changed because of this.
Wow.
So he's opening up to the light, to the consciousness and love and light side of the UFO field, man.
I just did hot yoga 4 times in the last 5 days. I'm fully back into the practice. So, yeah, awesome.
Is hot yoga better than cold yoga?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. Just wondering.
It's easier to be flexible and sweat. Like, it feels like a real workout, like a fucking huge workout. I went to one class. It was so hard, and I'm in pretty good shape, and I almost puked halfway through. I was like 20 minutes in. I was like, holy fuck, I got to stop this. It was crazy. Just because it was a totally different style class. It was really fast and really hot. So, yeah, that was good.
What's hot? What's really hot?
115 degrees, maybe.
Oh, it's like hot in the room. That's what hot yoga is. It's hot.
Yeah.
No, because Darren was thinking of yoga pants hot.
I was like, I don't know why they call it hot yoga. Every time you saying I'm going to hot yoga, I'm like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Oh no, like when
like,
I
who
sweat,
knows what you've got going on? It could be some weird fucking yoga club where everyone's dressed up
hot.
weird and
So
Yeah.
the last class I went to, 20 minutes in, there wasn't a dry spot left on my shirt, like sweating pouring off you.
you heard it here first, folks.
I think you need to put some kind of Cinemax type of soundtrack when Graham starts to discuss his yoga activities. For the ladies listening.
There's not many ladies listening. We don't have to worry.
Oh,
Maybe
you
Darren's
don't know-
mom.
You don't
My
know
mom,
that.
my mom won't even listen anymore.
Maybe that new fan in Brunei, maybe it's a girl who has the hots for you, man.
Yeah, that's okay. So let's move on.
Okay.
How do you move on?
Oh, what else? What else?
Now, Darren wanted to mention we've got some bloggers we want to talk about. Darren?
Oh, perfect.
Oh, well, yeah, I've got a new one in the works. I don't want to say nothing quite yet, but it looks like we'll have a new blogger coming on board, going to be writing about occulture, I think, occult in pop culture.
Ah, nice.
So I've been emailing back and forth with them. I'm pretty sure it's 100%, but I don't want to. I'll wait and make sure. So we can look forward to another blogger joining the team, and of course, head over to grimerica.ca and check out the blogs because we've got some great bloggers over there writing some great stuff. So
I got a kicked out of Jared Grace's post about Mexico's island of the dolls over in Xochimilco.
oh yeah, I seen that. When I said I was, yeah. I remember that comment thread.
Yeah, folks, you beside the post, you also need to read our comments because we got a lot of back and forth.
Oh, I meant to go there and read the rest of them today, and I forgot.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
We got an email too. We got a few emails actually. We got one from Spork Saber. He says, "Hi guys, love the show. Heard about you from either No Agenda or a Hagman and Hagman report. Love the new segment. Don't stop." So thanks Spork Saber for the comments.
Nice. Always good to get feedback.
Yeah, and
we got a lot of tweets too. A lot of tweets about the UFO segment.
Yeah. No, that's a good one. I'm looking forward to continuing on that. And everybody has a podcast, Darren.
Yeah, I can't remember if we mentioned it or not, but if you guys, if we haven't, we were on Everybody Has a Podcast 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Something like that. Anyway, it's over out there. There's a link to it on our website. Somewhere in there under the Grimerica show, there's a link to their download, or you can head over to everybodyhasapodcast.com and check it out and check out the rest of their stuff too, because it's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, you've been listening to them since that, right? It's been good.
Yeah, it's hilarious. Good stuff.
All right, so something else we want to start here is again the Higher Side Chats. Greg Carlwood started his money bomb over there, and it's going really good. So basically, we are going to adopt that idea. So we're asking for contributions to Grimerica, basically just to cover some of our expenses, and we will give half the total back to a lucky listener.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You contribute any amount
Every month.
Yeah, it'll be a new round every month, I think.
Yeah.
So you can either make a donation, $5, $10, whatever you want, or keep everything on the level. You can also mail a postcard to our P.O. box.
Yeah.
Do you have the P.O. box handy there?
Yeah, it's 16033, and that's 815 17th Ave, Southwest Calgary, T2T 5H7.
Yeah, and of course that's always available at grimerica.ca/contact as well. So yeah, if you can't afford, I know a lot of people can't afford the extra cash, so you can always just mail us a postcard to, and that'll enter you in that month's round. Or you can go and put up a Grimerica flyer someplace, take a picture of it, email it to us, and that'll get you in that month's running as well. So basically, what we're gonna do is if we take in less than $100, then we'll give 100% back to whoever wins the draw that month. I think I'm going to print them out. I'll print out all the email addresses, and I'll put them in a box, and I'm going to let my daughter pick one out.
Yeah.
Nice. I must say that this money bomb scheme is a pretty ingenious and pretty novel, economic model for the social networks. Like a positive self-reinforcing loop of goodwill.
Yeah. I mean, it's good because it helps people donate a bit, right? If like I donate to other podcasts and stuff like that, but giving me a chance to win money that then I can do with what I want with it would sort of help me, maybe push me over the edge to donate more.
Yeah, and even if you don't win, you know that some other lucky listener is going to be benefited by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a lottery. It's not a lottery.
So Darren's got another idea here he wants to talk about.
Oh, shit. I forgot all about that.
Do you want to mention it?
Oh, yeah. We might as well bring that up. So, yeah, there's another little fun thing. We're going to have the page up there. We're going to have the $5 a month subscription plan, and that'll put you in the money bomb every month. And with that will come along with, if you choose, that comes along with a Grimerica email address. So we're going to throw those out there for a while anyway. It'll probably get capped eventually because I don't feel like dealing with too many of them. But we can definitely do it for a little while. So I think we're going to do, if you can hop on the $5 a month thing, you get an email address or give us, should we do a one time too or no?
No, that's okay.
Comes with signing up for the money bomb. If you choose, can come up with the Grimerica email address.
So we'll write all this down and we'll have it on a page on the website.
And of course, you can just donate once in a while if you want to do it that way too. You don't have to be in the money bomb every month. You do it as you please.
Yeah. What do you think, RPJ?
Sweet. So the Grimerica email address, will it include some kind of video chat, so all the people from Yahoo that are creeped out from the fact that all these intelligence agencies are mining and are snooping on all their video chats, especially the ones that are involving sexually explicit content. Maybe they will decide to come over to Grimerica. Will they know that they will have a little more privacy?
Well, I won't look at it. I don't know enough about encryption or anything like that to do anything. I don't really. I assume that my host has decent. Our host has decent encryption.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's just an idea. See how it goes over.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. So we'll fire it up. See, I think we'll see how it goes. We might let the first one run through right till the end of April and take it from there. But yeah, it's a good idea. We think it's a good idea that THC came up with, so we're going to try it out here and see if we can offset some of our expenses and help out a listener every month with, hopefully eventually a random $100 or $70 or whatever. Yep. Every little bit helps out there. Yeah,
Greg's is already up to like 800, I think, so that's pretty cool. I think that about wraps it up for the intro. We've got Jim Harold coming up. Fascinating guy. He's basically got, he's built his own business on this model of podcasting and books about the paranormal, and he's a fascinating guy to listen to. He's got lots of good podcasts, the Campfire stories.
Books. Yeah, books. We used his book before.
Yeah.
In our Halloween episode.
Yeah, Paranormal podcast.
Yeah, have you checked out much Jim stuff, RPJ?
I've listened.
Oh, you
to
must
a
have met him
couple of
too,
his- I really didn't have a chance to talk to him directly. But yeah, I noticed that Graham, he had a chance to chat with him, and I think that Jim gave him a lot of good advice, about the podcast and all that.
Yeah, it was fascinating. Yeah, we did a little. He interviewed me a little bit too, and yeah, gave me a book. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great chat. I hope you guys enjoy it. So like we say, guys, flyer picks, postcards, contributions. We'll get this money bomb thing going and see if we can't help each other out. Big thanks to RPGA, of course, for coming back and joining us. And
Anytime, guys.
I think on that note, we will take a quick break and jump into our chat with Jim Harold.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys, next up in Grimerica, we're going to be talking with the one and only Jim Harold, podcaster, author, and all-around interesting guy. But first, you know him as Graham. How's it going tonight, buddy?
And I'm Graham. Hey, Darren. I'm doing well, buddy.
I switched it up. You see that?
Yeah, thanks. That was good. I'm excited about tonight's show. We've got Jim Harold here. I met him at Paradigm 2013. It was kind of cool to chat with a fellow podcaster. And, of course, we were just starting up, and I'd heard about Jim for years, and I'd listened to him a little bit, and then I got to meet him in person. So Jim Harold is like one of the most popular paranormal podcast hosts, and he's got 2 free podcasts, one called the Paranormal Podcast, and the other one is Jim Harold's Campfire. That's probably like how it sounds, lots of campfire stories. He's written a couple books, Jim Harold's Campfire, True Ghost Stories, and one that he gave us, and we talked about on the show a couple times, True Ghost Stories, Jim Harold's Campfire 2.
I think that was on our Halloween special.
Yes, it was, yeah. Yeah, we read a couple stories. Darren wasn't too happy with the ones I picked, but... So Jim holds a master's degree in applied communication theory and methodology, and he's accredited as a certified digital media consultant by the Radio Advertising Bureau. And he's had the opportunity to teach at the university level. But Jim's obviously decided to get behind the mic and follow his passion and do some paranormal podcasting. So we got lots to talk about tonight, Jim, and welcome to Grimerica.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here, and so good to talk with you and your listeners about the paranormal, and looking forward to having a lot of fun tonight.
So you've got your own show. Actually, you've got 2 shows, like Graham said. Can you kind of, for the 1 or 2 of our listeners that might not have heard of Jim Harold before, can you kind of give us a rundown, or what came first for you? Was it writing, or was it the podcast, and kind of how you stumbled into this fucked up little world of ours?
Yeah, exactly. Well, basically what happened is that I had gone to school for broadcasting. I'm like in my mid-40s, so and it was 2005, and I said, I'm never going to be able to really broadcast. That dream is gone, because actually I was working in media, behind the scenes and advertising and things like that, but not in front of the mic. So it always bugged me that I never really followed that. And I heard about this thing called podcasting. And I said, I might be able to do that. It's kind of a roll your own talk show. And so I decided, I think I want to do one of those. And then I started to think about the topic. I thought, I just don't want to do something just to do a podcast. I want to do something I'm truly fascinated in about and something I'm really interested in. And I kept thinking about, what do I tune when I'm tuning through the cable channels? What do I look for? When I go into a bookstore, a library, where do I head? And over, it kept coming to me that I had a fascination with the paranormal and had it since I was a little kid. I mean, back in the 70s, I used to watch the American show In Search Of incessantly.
I remember I was a huge Unsolved Mystery fan. Did they have that down
I love
there?
that too. Yeah, we did have that down. Robert Stack of Untouchables fame, in the 80s and the early 90s. And after In Search Of, I kind of graduated to that and always loved that. And I thought, you know what, I can do interviews with people. Maybe nobody will listen to it. I did it solely as a hobby. And started in 2005. Kind of dabbled for a couple of years. I'd do a show and not do a show for 6 months and then do another show. And finally, after 2 or 3 years, I got serious. And let's see, almost 2 years now, I've been doing it full time as my job. And the books came later. The first book came in 2011. Second book came last year. The third book will be this year, hopefully, in time for the Halloween season. And it's just been great. I love the subject matter. The funny thing is when, and you guys I'm sure can appreciate this, when I first started, I'm like, this will be great. I'll interview all these really smart people, and I'll have all this paranormal stuff figured out in 6 months. And no, it didn't work out like that. I have more questions. Yeah, it's like you go down the wormhole, right? It's kind of like, wait a minute, or the rabbit hole. You just go, up is down, down is up, left is right, and things
tunnels all over the place.
Yeah. Well, the thing is I used to think about it and all this paranormal stuff in very discrete silos. UFOs were over here, ghosts were over here, cryptids were over here, and now sometimes it seems like they're all just kind of it's like a paranormal mashup, and they all have possibly are interrelated. So I'm confused as hell actually, but I'm having a great time being confused, and I really enjoy it. And I got to say, I forgot to mention the intro. Graham helped me at Paradigm Symposium. I want to publicly thank him for that because I was doing my Jerry Lewis impersonation, trying to balance books and things, and he came to my rescue and helped me carry some books in. So thank you for that.
But, you're welcome.
But anyway, I love what I do. Couldn't think of anything more fun. And just enjoy it and talking to people. And the cool thing is I'm in the States here in Canada, and I'm sure you guys have listeners all over from probably Australia and the UK, and talking to people all over the world about this stuff because it's like a real common theme, and we see these things repeating from society to society.
Yeah, your love of it really comes through, I think. And it's fascinating that you've been into it since really the beginning of podcasts.
Yeah, you must have really been one of the first podcasts out there. Like that's kind of, I think around, I'm thinking 2006, 2007 must have been the first. Maybe.
Yeah, well, there were podcasts. I mean, I think I came on board right after iTunes put it into the directory in 2005. It was like a month later. I'd actually, before it was in iTunes, I had planned to do one. And I remember there was a site, I think it's still out there. I don't know if it's updated. It's called Podcast Alley. And I went there and I thought, okay, well, let me see. There's got to be paranormal podcasts out there. And there were 20 of them. And I thought, oh my God, how am I going to stand out of 20 different shows? And now there's probably 20,000, which is fine. I mean, that's great. And the other thing, and the luckiest thing for me, and I think something that's really helped the popularity of the show, and it was pure luck, was when I was looking to name the show, the Paranormal Podcast, I thought, well, what can I call it? Now, I'm not the brightest guy and not the most creative, so I thought, well, it's a podcast, and it's on the paranormal, so why don't I call it the Paranormal Podcast? And I thought for sure somebody has that, and they didn't.
Yeah.
So the nice thing is now when somebody Googles Paranormal Podcast, you can guess what comes up. So I think that's great. That's helped a lot.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's not talent, it's luck.
I seem really attracted to the podcasts that have been around for a while. Like even some of the non-paranormal ones I listen to are guys that have been doing it for many, many years. So like the Dan Carlins of the world.
Dan Carlin is awesome. Dan Carlin is, in fact, I can tell you that Dan Carlin indirectly played a major role in me taking it seriously. I was at a T-ball game my daughter had, and I guess this makes me a bad dad, but I was listening to Hardcore History, which is a fantastic podcast.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, I'm getting emails all the time. People wanting, when's the next episode? When's the next episode? And this guy's doing it, and he's getting sponsors.
Yeah.
And he's great, and he's still way better than I am. But
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I feel he is. He's an artist. I mean, he really is a craftsman. But the point is that I'm like, if he can do it, I can. Why don't I get serious with it? And so in a way, I think I've never spoken to Dan, don't know Dan. Dan, I'm sure, doesn't know me. But I'd like to thank him publicly because indirectly, it's kind of like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? You've got something people have shown an interest. Take the ball and run with it.
Go ahead.
So Dan Carlin is one of my podcasting idols.
Yeah, it's funny. One of the things that really intrigued me too is I would listen to guys like Dan Carlin or yourself or even a variety of topics, really, like pick my favorite topic and then find the podcast that resonates the most with me. But I would email guys and they would get back to me. So it was interesting how I could actually communicate with people directly. And Dan Carlin, I emailed him a couple times and I mentioned something about UFOs to him because something had happened. I don't know if it was Stevensville or something was in the media. Right. And he says, I almost did a show on it. I was really close, but I decided to wait or something, or I decided not to. So I was kind of bugging him. Every once in a while I go, so how about that UFO show you're going to do? I go, beware. I think I kind of warned him. I said, beware. That's quite the rabbit hole. You might not want to go down or something. But
yeah, that's a good point. But boy, does he do a great job. And what's interesting, now I haven't followed him. I used to listen to a ton of podcasts, and the truth is I'm so busy now making podcasts because I have my free podcasts and I have my Premiere, my Plus podcasts. So I'm so busy doing that and the books and everything. I have very little time to actually listen to podcasts. But as I recall, he doesn't really have a super regular schedule. But the thing is, the podcasts are so good that they stand on their own, and people, I think, hey, it might be worth 2 or 3 weeks or a month to wait for this next podcast because really is kind of, I kind of consider him like the Ken Burns of audio podcasting.
Yeah. I agree.
I learned about podcasting, I think, about 12 months before I had a podcast.
Yeah, I think that's very common. See, the thing about podcasting is that if you remember 2005, 2006, it was the hot thing. Podcasting, I think, was the word of the year one of those years. And then it was podcasting is dead because YouTube came along and it's very glamorous and people get millions of views and all of that. And the funny thing is that podcasting was dead, but there were guys like me and Carlin and a lot of other people, Leo Laporte, the list goes on, who kept producing podcasts. I don't put myself in their same category, except that I was doing podcasts at the time. And the audiences continued to grow slowly, but they continued to grow. They never went down. And then something very important happened, something that all of us carry around with us, the smartphone.
Yes.
And before you had to plug it into your computer and update through iTunes if you had a iPod or an iPod. It was out before the iPhone was even out. But it was a big pain. Now everybody's carrying basically a media player around with them all the time, and it's getting easier and easier and easier to consume them. And I think that'll only increase. That's probably why you just found out about it 12 months before you started doing it, I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably. Well, Graham turned me on to podcasts, and then I think it was probably about 6 months later I was bugging him to start our own.
Yeah.
Well, I will mention this, and this is a little plug. I'm actually teaching a class right now on podcasting. I just started this over the last month or so. It's over at podcastwithjim.com. The premise is how to create a podcast without breaking the bank, because I started out basically with a $50 headset and a crappy Windows computer. Not saying anything against Windows, just it was a
It's okay to say things
this was
against
literally
Windows.
a crappy Windows computer. But anyway, that's the way I started. Now, I think maybe someone will do a little better than I did initially, but it's so cheap to do. And it's just really if you're willing to put the time in. And I'm sure you guys have found it tremendously rewarding, whether it's rewarding personally, professionally, financially, whatever. I think most people that put out a podcast, even though it is work, there's no question, it can be a heck of a lot of fun. And it gets you the opportunity, if nothing else. I know for me, the first few years, I didn't make a penny. But it was so cool to be able to, hey, I talked to Stanton Friedman the other day.
Yeah.
I talked to Brad Steiger the other day. I mean, that's worth something. And every category has their Brad Steigers and their Stanton Friedmans and their Bill Burns and their Nick Redferns. And to be able to go into that space and say, hey, I'm going to do a show about it. You know, if you're into bottle cap collecting, you know, you want to become the best known bottle cap collector in the world, start a podcast on it. Put it in some forums. All of a sudden, people are going to say, hey, that's the show to go to for bottle cap collecting. So that's the premise, whether it's for a hobby or it's just for fun. And that's podcastwithjim.com. I'm a big believer in this medium. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great to develop relationships. And I just love it.
So you think it's growing still? Like, even though there's, everybody has a podcast these days, like, do you think there's still like a lot of untapped potential there?
Well, yes, because first of all, I hate to say this, but I'm guessing for every 10 people that start a podcast, one will stick with it. So that's the first thing. I mean, people have been doing radio, television, writing, you know, in case of writing, for thousands of years. But whatever the medium, there have been people doing it. Yeah, I think there's absolutely an opportunity. A good example is there's a guy who can't remember his name, I think John Lee Dumas, started a show called Entrepreneur on Fire. He started it a year ago. And he has like 1 million downloads a week or some crazy number. And by the time he started, there were, you know, a gazillion business podcasts. But this guy just decided to start. And something that he did had a unique niche. For example, one of the most popular podcasts, Mark Maron, has been doing a show maybe for 2 or 3 years. And he's probably got the hottest podcast out there. Now, every comedian wants a podcast. I feel like a slacker. I've been doing it for 9 years, and I don't approach their numbers. So the people like that. So my point is that if you've got something good, it's something valuable. Yeah, I don't think there's any better time to start a podcast than right now.
Wow.
And it's only going to grow. It's only going to grow.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
You're ahead of the curve.
I still talk to people that don't really know what a podcast is, which is interesting, or they kind of have heard it, but they don't really.
Right. There's still people like that.
And some people aren't interested, even though they like maybe talk radio or something. They're just not. They haven't really found their passion with it yet. So
I think another thing that's going to help, if you look at Apple, and I know we're a paranormal show and we're kind of going down the podcast area, but I love talking about podcasting too, is that if you look at Apple, for example, is going to introduce iOS in the car here in the next couple of years. I think in Hondas and some other brands. To me, see, I used to work in radio behind the scenes, and the advantage that radio always had and still has is you push a button and it's on. And people are fundamentally lazy.
Yeah.
And I think that the closer the podcasting comes to that experience, and we're getting closer. If you look at something like Stitcher Radio.
Yeah.
You know, it's basically you push a button and it works. And once people have something in their car that says, and I know there are some that actually have this now, but something's very easy. It says podcast and they push a button and it works and they don't have to fiddle with it a lot. I mean, it's going to be it's not 100% there. That's why YouTube is so popular. You just send a link, you click on, boom, it plays.
Right.
I think that it'll take longer. And podcasting is a different thing. The numbers are smaller, but you said something interesting about you wrote the podcaster and they wrote you back. And I bet you most of the podcasters that you listened to for a long time, you felt you knew them. And you felt that you had a personal relationship with them. But if you watch Friday on YouTube, you don't necessarily feel like you have a relation, or some funny video, a Jimmy Fallon video, or whatever it is. You don't necessarily feel you have a relationship with that person by watching that 2-minute viral, funny YouTube video. But podcasts you listen to, again, the numbers are much smaller, but the relationships are much deeper.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So I think it's, for me, podcasting is quality over quantity. You may not have as many followers, but you will have people who really buy into what it does, what you do. And if you're likable at all, you're going to find some people who like what you like. Yeah.
Do you put yours up to YouTube as well?
Not right now. I actually did a video podcast for 2 years. The Paranormal Report. I'm actually looking at reviving that, and this spring maybe. I did it with a guy who was on the American cable channel Fox News. It wasn't political in any way. He's also interested in the paranormal, and we did that for 2 years, and it was very popular. And that's something I'm really looking forward to reviving. That was a weekly clip show, so we would show clips of videos of UFOs and things like that, and then we would analyze them and talk about them. And that was very popular, and I'm looking forward to adding that back in. And that was a video podcast.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd love to check that out. So what about just audio on YouTube?
I haven't done that yet. No.
Okay.
And it's probably, frankly, laziness. And the other thing is that the way my programs work, I rotate them from a free side over to a paid side. So my free shows are free for 90 days, and then they rotate over to my pay site.
Right.
So I guess it makes sense not to put them up there, because then they would be up there, and but no one would want to pay for them. Plus, I have a lot of exclusive shows that I do pay only.
Right.
I actually do a true crime show, for example, and I do one on UFOs and one on conspiracies, and so I have several different shows I do as part of my Paranormal Plus Club. But if nobody's ever heard me, I never steer them in the paid direction. I say listen to as many free podcasts as you can over at jimharold.com, iTunes, wherever, and see if it's something that you like.
Yeah, that's great. I heard recently you're talking about a couple webinars too or something. So you've got some unusual type stuff going on with some of your guests too, right?
Oh, yeah. We do, as part of my Paranormal Plus Club, we do probably 4 or 5 classes a year. And those are video webinars like a conference presentation that you would see. And we just had a 2-parter with David Weatherly, who talked about black-eyed kids and strange paranormal intruders and the jinn. And what we basically do is bring to people in the comfort of their own home on something like a GoToWebinar, just like you would use in business. We let the presenter give a presentation just as they would at a conference. The only difference is you can watch it from your own home. You can actually call in and ask questions live. Or if you miss it, it's archived over at my Paranormal Plus site. And you can watch it. And I think we have maybe, I don't know, probably well over a 12 or 15 sessions already archived over there that people can watch in addition to listening to all the podcasts.
So you could just get the shit scared out of you at home and in comfort.
Exactly.
Of your,
that's the idea. That's exactly right.
So you've been at
brought
this,
to you by Depends.
Yeah. You've been at this 9 years. You must have interviewed hundreds of people. Any standouts?
Well, I love Brad Steiger. For those who aren't familiar, he's really kind of the granddaddy of them all, so to speak. He's in his 70s, and he's written, God, I don't know how many books, like 60. I'm probably way underestimating it. I don't know if it's like 100 books or something, all on the paranormal. And he has written on everything. I mean, every possible paranormal topic you can think of, he has written on. Mm-hmm. Very nice man, and he has this great voice, and I can't even begin to impersonate it. Well, Jim, let me tell you about the UFOs. But I can't do it, but he's fantastic. Nice guy, and I get to talk to him once or twice every year, and it's literally a highlight of my year. Another guy that I like to talk to, and I haven't for a while, I don't think he's come out with a book for about 1.5 years now, there's a gentleman in Ireland. His name is Bob Curran. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. And he's done books on vampires and different creatures and cryptids and different things. And he'll be, Jim, I've got to tell you about the vampires. And he's so great. I love him. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, fantastic. She's very accomplished. She's written a book with George Norrie. She's written tons of books. She knows every topic out there. Graham, you'll appreciate Nick Redfern, fantastic. And a hell of a nice guy. I mean, I was just astounded. I'm like, because he looks, I don't know if you've, the audience has seen a picture of Nick, but he's kind of an intimidating looking guy.
Yeah.
And he's one of the nicest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
But he knows, and actually, I kind of consider him like the young Brad Steigers, like a protege. I love talking to Stanton Friedman. He was great. Jeff Belanger, if you know him, over from ghostvillage.com. He's always a lot of fun. It's hard to pick out, literally you said hundreds, and I know I've done probably altogether over 800 paranormal podcasts. Now, some of those have been Campfire and Paranormal Podcasts, some of my other shows. It's hard to remember everybody. I'm sure like tonight I'll think of, damn, why didn't I say that person? It's really hard to figure out, but it's really interesting. Now, I've also talked to some people who, well, let's put it this way. I don't know if their load may have been a few bricks shy. I had one guy who said, well, you know, I teleported. One day I was in a northern climate and it was cold, and I teleported to the Bahamas, and I had a delightful afternoon with 2 young women. And then I came back and I had, and this wasn't a campfire thing. This was like a author, a guest. And I said, well, can you repeat that in laboratory environments? And he said, well, no, that's not the way it works. But anyway, I've never had him back. But I'm like, come on. And not to say that I don't believe in the improbable. I do. I think that there's a hell of a lot of stuff that goes on that we don't understand. And I think that we as humans, most of us, tend to overestimate our understanding of the world. An example, DNA. DNA has always existed, right? Mm-hmm. You know, 100 years ago, if you would have told somebody about DNA, they would have said, you're just making that stuff up.
Yeah.
But they, on the other hand, they believed in the ether. So, so now we talk to scientists and we say, well, what if this? What if that? What if that? And they're like, you're crazy. That couldn't be. And I just think that sometimes people, particularly in the scientific community, just think they've got it all figured out. And God bless science. I mean, right now, we're doing something that years ago would have taken a satellite to do. So God bless science. I love science. Science is great. But I think sometimes we get this feeling, well, you know, we're really, really intelligent and we've got life all figured out. And my friends, I don't think we have 0.1% of life figured out. It's way more complex than I think we can even comprehend. And that's why earlier I said, you know, I started asking these questions and now I'm just totally confused because there is so much out there. And I think that sometimes we need to be a little more humble and understand that we don't understand it all or even a little bit of it.
What do you think about the possibility that 100 years ago DNA didn't exist? And it wasn't until we...
It was a construct, yeah.
It wasn't until we developed technology that allowed us to look at things that small that reality had to come up with something for us to see.
So I'm hearing shades of Schrödinger's cat here, right? Yeah. You know, the observed change by the act of observation.
Yeah, and it's a big thing in like in a simulated or digital universe scenario as well.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people now who are saying that we are possibly a simulation, right? So the thing I hate to say is I mean, the quote rational side of me thinks DNA was always here. But I couldn't say that even the guy that teleported. I mean, it's tough to be critical sometimes because I can't say with 100% certitude that he didn't teleport. I find it kind of highly unlikely.
Yeah.
But
well, maybe he did, but the 2 chicks thing, that's a bit unlikely.
Yeah, he went there and he was like he couldn't buy a woman a drink. You know, that would be the ironic thing, wouldn't it? If he did actually go. But he totally struck out.
Or because he was so frozen still, he's like, I was in the pool.
He just imagined the women. The teleporting was real. But that is one of the more interesting theories out there, is this idea that this is all a simulation. But then sometimes I also wonder, a lot of times we pick up these things from popular culture or movies, Matrix and so forth. That are we just coming up with these things because we saw it in a movie? You know, I'd be interested, and I'm sure there have been analysis done after Close Encounters of the Third Kind came out. Was there a spike in UFO sightings? After Communion by Whitley Strieber came out, was there a spike in alien abduction stories? I mean, I know I certainly heard a lot more of it after that book. So sometimes I wonder, because my theory of the paranormal is that there is a percentage that is real and is representing something very unusual going on. But I think there's probably a larger percentage that are people maybe seeing things that they want to see.
Yeah, maybe.
Or imagining things where they're not, and seeing ghosts where they're not. Even though I very much believe there is something going on, I also believe that sometimes, we watch all the ghost hunting shows and we immerse ourselves in stuff. And this is really bad because this is my job and this is what I do, and I immerse myself in it too. But sometimes I think we have to have a little bit of caution on the other hand, because we tend to see what we want to see, hear what we want to hear. So I think there's room on the skeptical side to be a little more accepting, and I think there's room on our side to maybe be a little more skeptical.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're kind of in the middle like that too. I mean, the skeptical community definitely uses that Hollywood angle to explain some increases. Like I think they've touted trends in that type of thing, and then and then more on the UFO or the believer side say, well, more people are looking up after that. So it's right. Still this like circular argument.
Standoff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And the thing is I don't think we get anywhere from that. I talked to Dr. Michael Shermer, who is probably, he and James Randi are probably the two best known skeptics out
on
there.
The show?
Yeah, I talked to Shermer on the show. He came on the show.
Yeah.
And I got to say, I give him credit. He was a very nice guy. I mean, I had no problem with it. But we were talking, have a very civil conversation. I like to have a skeptic on 2 or 3 times every year to just kind of keep me semi-honest. And anyway, I had him on, and we had a nice conversation. And I said, well, Dr. Shermer, I may very well agree with you in those cases. I can totally understand the idea that we're looking for things that maybe we want to see, that we believe we should see. I totally get that
type of stuff.
Exactly. But I believe there is a small percentage that just cannot be explained by those kind of things. For example, UFO sightings. You have people like pilots, and I've heard some skeptics say pilots are the worst witnesses, which makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like, give me a break. But anyway, back to my thought, if I don't totally wreck my train of thought here. Basically, the idea here is that there's a small percentage, Dr. Shermer, that you can't explain, I can't explain. We've got good witnesses, credible people who are generally trusted in society that aren't seeing a ghost around every curtain or a UFO every time they look out the window, and they've reported these things. Mm-hmm. Don't we see that those exist? Don't we acknowledge those exist? And he's like, oh yes, but we just decide to put those on a shelf. And I'm like, what? Put them on a shelf? He said that? Yeah. I mean, I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah.
He basically said we put them on a shelf, and I thought, why in the world would we put those on the shelf?
They put them in the X-Files.
The rest of them should be on the shelf. I mean, really.
That's right. Let's take those down and put those under our microscopes and put those into our test tubes and Bunsen burners and try to figure out what the hell's going on. But let's put those on a shelf so we can discount everything else.
So have you had an experience yourself with anything? Like Graham and I have both. I don't know. There's probably an explanation for what I've seen. But I think Graham's had a pretty genuine UFO sighting. Have you had anything Bigfoot or UFO or...
No Bigfoot, no UFO, no full-body apparition type thing. I've had some weird things happen to me in terms of almost like synchronicity. I had something that happened to me after my brother died, hearing a song on the radio that you would never hear on the radio. And it just happened to come up as I was driving through a small town in a rural area and just happened to turn over to a station, and it came on. Never heard that song on the radio before or since. And I thought that was some form of an after-death communication, and I've heard other people report something, similar things. My dad had some great stories, a couple of them. My dad, it's funny, he was a steel worker. He's still with us, thankfully. And he had a couple of, one ghost story and one almost a Mothman type sighting. And I think that maybe teed me up for this whole thing growing up, because it was like, well, if my dad would say stuff like this, and he's not... Believe me, my dad is the last guy that would like be sleeping with a pyramid under his bed. And I think that kind of subliminally... Have
you seen my room or something? Or?
I'm a steel...
Right by the crystals.
I'm actually a steel worker.
Oh, cool. Well, I have all the respect in the world. My dad was a steel worker. My uncle was a steel worker. And that's some hard work. And I think maybe getting harder these days with... the economic pressures and things. But
all the money's in Alberta. There's oil money spilling over the brim out here.
Wow. Well, I can tell you in Ohio here, there is no kind of money like that. It's kind of depressed. Cleveland, I come from the Cleveland area, which I know everybody is very jealous and very glamorous place. But really was a steel town. A lot of people think about Pittsburgh as a steel town, but in much the same sense, Cleveland was a steel town. And unlike Pittsburgh, who had the ability to pivot after the steel mills really kind of went down, Cleveland still hasn't recovered 30 years later, 25 years later. So it's been a hard knock on this area. But what I'm saying is my dad was a working class guy and really wasn't given to flights of fancy, or isn't given to flights of fancy, and had a couple of tremendous stories. And I'm guessing that made a mark on me. So I kind of think, where's my dramatic ghost sighting? Where's my dramatic UFO sighting? But I've had enough happen that's been just strange enough to personally convince me of all this. Yeah.
So has your views changed, let's say more or less skeptical, or has your viewpoint changed at all, besides having more questions since your podcast, since you went like full time, or since you've been podcasting?
Well, since I've been it's not really changed in the last couple of years, but I'll tell you, it's weird because in one way it's made me more skeptical. In another way, it's made me less skeptical. Now, let me explain.
Yeah.
In the broad sense, I believe more so that there are things going on that we don't understand, and there's something to all this stuff than I ever have.
Right.
But it has made me more skeptical about individual stories. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In other words, I believe in general there's something going on. There is something to these stories. But before I did the podcast, I would hear a story or read a news report, particularly reading news reports. And I would say, there's the proof. And now I look at those things much more closely. But on the flip side, it's also made me really pissed off at traditional media because I don't know. I'm guessing it's the same way in Canada. Anytime there's a UFO sighting or a cryptid sighting or whatever it might be, the script goes something like this. People in southwest Alberta are saying that they're seeing something in the skies. We'll have the film at 11. And then exactly the X-Files music. Well, have you seen anything like that, Nancy? No, I guess I haven't seen anything. Well, I guess we'll have to wait till next time. What about you, Bruce? Nah, maybe ate a little too much to drink. Yeah, the happy talk stuff.
Maybe they've been smoking a little too much there in southwest Alberta.
Exactly. Although I have had some, great campfire stories where people have called up and said that they may have been worshiping at the altar of the herb a little bit, and I thought, well, maybe that has something to do with your sighting. But that being said, that kind of template that media puts on really tees me off. The other thing the media will do. Here's another thing the media will do, which is absolutely one of my pet peeves.
I think I can guess what you're going to say. Let's see.
Okay. Let's say somebody in Alberta sees a UFO. Okay. And gives the account of it, and about 2/3 down the way in the story, they'll say something like this. But many UFO sightings can be explained by swamp gas, and Benjamin Radford says why. And then they give a quote from Ben Radford or some other debunker and saying why UFO sightings are BS. Not addressing that specific sighting, but UFO sightings in general. It's almost like they have 2 or 3 standard paragraphs to put under any UFO sighting. Or, if it's a Bigfoot sighting, okay, the Bigfoot sighting, okay, here's our standard 2 or 3 paragraphs we have to put in every Bigfoot sighting story or ghost story. And that just bugs the hell out of me, because if you're going to critique somebody's sighting, do it on the merits of their experience, not on just a blanket statement that you throw on all of this stuff.
Yeah. The thing that bothers me...
Not that I'm passionate about it.
No, that drives me nuts too. The thing that bothers me about it is when they only focus on the sightings that are either so silly that there's no sense to them at all, like there's no real mystery there, or they've already been proven as fake or whatever. So they're never left with the genuine sighting that's unproven, that we still don't have the answer for.
Right. And the thing is that I don't think that, and sometimes maybe we as paranormal enthusiasts or paranormalists or whatever you want to call us, maybe we don't present it this way, but they've got to understand that a lot of us have a nuanced position on this stuff. I mean, I think you guys fall in the same category as I do. We don't believe in everything that comes down the pike. On the other hand, we're not going to reject out of hand everything that comes down the pike.
Right.
We have a nuanced, kind of feel about this. So I wish that they would. I wish that they would see that, but who knows?
Do you see it opening up? Like, it seemed like I'm asking this on all our podcasts, but the last 5 or 10 years, it feels like it's opening up to me.
The only thing that I can think, I think that the hardcore core debunkers are still going to be what they are. And, and I met a couple of these people at the Paradigm Symposium, a couple of the hardcore skeptics, and they just, the one guy reminded me a little of Michael Moore, but it just seemed like anything you would say to him, it was just like, well, I'm not going to hear this. So I think those people, I don't think will ever move them, but maybe the general population, I think, is being moved in general and sharing more stories. I certainly see it on my Campfire show. People more willing to share their stories and say, this happened to me. So I think that it's a long haul. And what I'm hoping for is that we see more people of science wanting to look in these things. And as you look at quantum physics and the idea of the multiverse and those types of things, quantum mechanics, hopefully scientists are becoming more open to the idea of a reality that we couldn't have imagined years ago. And maybe that's the way that all of this happens. Maybe that's the way that they become more open to the idea that there may be something to some of these things. And again, I don't think that there's any... I think there's very possible all of this stuff that we experience, whether it's life after death in terms of seeing ghosts or UFOs, it may all be scientifically explicable. But I think it was Arthur C. Clarke or somebody said something along the lines, it might be the science of the 25th century. I just hope that scientists start realizing that this might be some stuff that they really should be looking seriously at, not laughing.
Yeah. So when it comes to the media, do you think that they're sort of whitewashing or generalization or sort of ridicule of the topic is intentional, or is it just that they're stuck in their paradigm and the system is the way it is?
I don't necessarily think there's anything conspiratorial about. Having worked in the media, it's my observation, and I'm talking about the mainstream media, television and so forth. In general, those people are very, and I hate to say this, they've got a lot to do. Let me say that. They've got, you don't think it's a tough job, but it is a tough job to fill all that content.
Right.
So in general, I think they're lazy. So I think the basic, what's happened over time is, let's say that you have a story, somebody in Minnesota, and they're going to report one of these stories. And they report the same way they do in Alberta, the same way they do in Los Angeles, the same way they do in Cleveland. I don't think that person in Minnesota was told by somebody from the CIA or the NSA or somebody to, let's run down UFO experiencers. I don't think that's all. I think basically at this point, it's like covering a fire, right? There's a certain way you cover a fire. There's a certain way you cover a UFO story. And that is to go out, do an interview, take some pictures of the sky, play some X-Files music in the back, and kick it back to the studio where everybody can have a nice chuckle. And that's how we do this story. I think that's really what you're seeing. Question is, how did we get to this point? Was there somebody way back that said, maybe we should start discrediting this stuff? Maybe we should start laughing at this stuff. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And journalists are victims as much as we are, in a way, because they're not laughing at it because they're trying to discredit it, they're not smart enough to realize that they're discrediting it, that maybe they're just pawns in a bigger game. So you make that the convention, the way you cover that story. 20 years down the road, it's like, oh, let's have another UFO story that we can laugh at. And you're still achieving that aim of discrediting the whole thing. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on the local or the less prominent TV or media level, but when it comes to, I think, the big ones and the Washington Post or the New York Times and stuff like that, I think there is more of a, like, no, you're not going to cover that stuff kind of thing going on.
Well, I think that's true. And the other thing that I'll say is I think it's changed over the years. I mean, in the 1950s, I believe it was 1952, the summer of the UFOs, when UFOs were buzzing Washington, D.C. and things. Life magazine had like a multi-page spread on it. Yeah. Now, could you imagine that happening now with a comparable outlet? Life magazine's gone, but the New York Times maybe? Yeah. No, of course not. Yeah. So I think that there's been a closing of the mind. It's curious to know what that closing of the mind may have been caused from and who caused it. And I think there's
the Robertson panel comes to mind.
Exactly. So I don't know. I don't know if there's hope. But I think that the hope is right here on the internet.
Yeah, and with
as long as it's not. Yeah, well,
I was going to be specific about your show, right? Like your other show, the Campfire Story Show, right? That is more about like allowing people a medium or a venue to talk about their experience, right?
Yeah, that show started in 2009, so it's about ready to have its 5th anniversary. And basically that's just people who say, Jim, this happened to me.
See, that's great. That's what's opening it up, I think.
And I'm not judgmental, and because I think it's a little different if an author comes on your show and he tells you he's been teleported, but it's and he has a book to sell, and I think it's a little different, a little different if it's an individual who's bearing their soul. So I try to be very supportive and just let them tell the stories, and some are more incredible than others, but particularly the ones I include in my books. I really try to focus on the ones that I think are the most sincere. And the funny thing is when I started this show back in 2009, I just did a special episode of the Paranormal Podcast, and a lot of people liked it. So I thought it'd be a separate show. And I thought, this will be fun. We'll all be around, quote, the electronic campfire, and we'll tell spooky stories. And I didn't really think of it being any more than that. It was just kind of entertaining. Excuse me. But it turned out to be more than that. I think it's almost kind of grown into, and I don't claim to be any kind of guru or a psychologist or anything like that, so let me be clear. But it's kind of like a paranormal support group of the air in this sense.
Yeah.
Somebody from California calls, and they say, I saw this when I was 5 years old, and I could never understand it. And then somebody from Florida calls 3 weeks later and said, that person that called about that, whatever it was, shadow person they saw when they were 5, I saw exactly the same thing in Florida when I was 7. And we see a lot of that. And I've had people come on the show and say, Jim, this is a story I never told anybody for 30 years. And now I'm telling you and your audience. And it's really, people, it's not just boo. I had a story last week, very poignant story, about a woman who had, in the last year, a terrible year of loss. All kinds of relatives and everything passed away. And then she told about this one evening where she went outside and had almost a spiritual experience, and there was a beautiful moon, and all these kind of things happened. And she timed it, and she took a picture of the moon. It was so beautiful. She was just overcome. Come to find out the next day, she finds out her friend passed away at what she figured was about the same time. Mm-hmm. That this happened totally unexpectedly. And she couldn't figure out what was going on, but it was like this moving spiritual moment. So she went back to her phone and checked the time, and anybody who has a smartphone knows when you take a picture, it'll give you an exact time. That picture of the moon timed to exactly the minute that her friend died.
Wow.
So it doesn't always have to be spooky, boo. It can be poignant, it could be touching, it could be frightening. But they're real people telling real stories. And, a paranormal podcast gets more listeners, but the Campfire gets much more visceral reaction. And I've got to say, if somebody had to say, if you had to choose one show or the other, which one would you do? And I have to be the Campfire, because I think it's very genuine. Not to say the other show's disingenuous, but it's very genuine. Just people, regular people. And I've had doctors, I've had lawyers, I've had military people, I've had cops. I've had all kinds of people. And for the most part, I find them to be very sincere. And they say, hey, Jim, and many of them, and some of my favorite ones are the ones that say, nothing's ever happened to me except for this one thing. And they're very steadfast that it happened. And I'm kind of honored that they choose to share their stories on my program.
Yeah, no, I admire that. I mean, that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this podcast with Darren too, is just to be able to talk about that, or have people discuss their experiences, or, you know, be a part of the opening up and not to be ridiculing people, you know.
No, I think that's important. I think that people have to feel that they have a safe place to tell their stories. And it's interesting. So many people have stories that happened to them when they were children. And these people, you know, I've talked to people 50, 60 years old. And this is something that happened to them when they were 5. But they recall it intensely, even sometimes to the point of almost crying about it. Yeah. And to me, when something like that happens to you, so powerful that you remember it for 20, 30, 40 years, I really don't think for the most part you're making it up. I think that it's something that really happened to you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we get any answers, but at least we can say, well, these are the questions that we should ask. And it's just an honor to do the show. It's really probably my favorite thing I do.
Do you have any of the stories that are your personal favorites at all that you want to share?
Well, yeah. This one actually is from my latest book, and this is really kind of freaky. Let's see, which one do I want to do? I think the one I want to do, if I can find it here, is called A Nightmare Before Elm Street.
Okay.
And this
I've
about
seen that one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
This is A Nightmare Before Elm Street.
Oh, it's a prequel.
Yeah, this is a prequel, going back to 1961, actually. My listener's name is Frank. He was from Colorado, and he was 5 years old. His dad was in the service, and he lived with his mom, and they lived in Illinois. And I believe his dad was off serving the country, and they were staying in this little house. And anyway, Frank said that this particular house scared him a little bit. You know, he found it a little bit frightening, but he decided that, he's got to go on. His dad's not there. Anyway, he has this one night where he went to sleep, and he had a horrible dream. In the dream, he was in his backyard, and there was a hill in the backyard, and a door opened out of the hill, and a figure came out of the hill and was chasing him. He said this person had long fingers with knives on them. And he said he was running from him, and he fell. And he said in his dream he was trying to drag himself away, and just before this character got to him, he woke up. Now, he shared a room with his sister, who was only 4, and he woke up and he told his sister, "Get Mom, because I can't move my legs." So his sister went and got his mom, and they called the doctor, and this is back in the day when they still did house calls. So the doctor comes and said, "Who scared this child so horribly that he can't move his legs?" And they said, "We don't know. He had a nightmare." And literally, I guess his grandma had to come over for like a week and do rudimentary physical therapy and work with his legs until he could walk again.
Wow.
And he said throughout his childhood he would periodically have this dream, but it would never be as bad, and it would be a lot of times maybe if he was sick. So anyway, we jumped to the late 1980s, and he's talking to a friend of his, and his friend says, "Hey, I got this movie that you ought to check out." So she gave him a VHS tape of it. He'd never seen it. It was called Nightmare on Elm Street. And he said he'd never seen it before, and he went home and he popped it into his VHS player, so we're dating ourselves a little bit here. He turned it on, and he thought he was going to have a heart attack, because when he saw the Freddy Krueger character, he realized that was the man who was in his nightmare in 1961.
Wow.
Freddy killed kids in their dreams. He said that he always told his mother, I thought if that man had caught me, he would have killed me. He would have died in his sleep.
Yeah, but he lived
that movie 20 years before it was made.
Wow. Tulpa. That's very Tulpa-ish. I wonder how many people had that dream before,
I had heard on another podcast, and I should research this. I have not researched it, but apparently some of the basis for Nightmare on Elm Street, and I don't know if this is true, this is just what I was told, was based on some somewhere in Asia, young people were having dreams and dying, that they were being scared to death. And what's interesting, this gentleman had mentioned in his story, I didn't impart this, but his mom was Japanese. And I just wonder if it was something across Asian cultures or something like that. But I just thought that was really a very, very interesting one.
Yeah, that's freaky. That was one of the freaky movies when I was growing up. Like in my teens, that was popular. So yeah, that was pretty creepy.
Yeah, it was. And the thing is that it's just crazy, crazy stuff. And the funny thing I got to tell you is that I always think, I've heard every story.
Yeah,
I've heard every story, and I haven't heard every story because I constantly get surprised. It just always amazes me how I can get surprised. Do you want to hear another one?
Yeah. I was just going to ask you. Yeah.
Okay. Well, here's one that I love. This is called Not Just Any Painting, and this is in Campfire, too. And this happened, again, these stories of people when they're very young. And I believe this was Jay in California. And this happened when he's around 4 years old. Now, about a year before, his mom had divorced and taken him and his sister and moved in with a friend. And they moved in kind of this little apartment that was almost like a motel, Jay said. And during that time, his mom went to a garage sale in San Francisco and went into one of the Victorian homes, and they had painted pictures for sale. Not prints, but real paintings. So she bought one, and one aside he said about this house was, his mom said that it was interesting because on top of the ceiling, instead of just, white paint, there was part of the ceiling that was supposed to represent heaven and the other part hell. And his mom had asked these people, what were these people into? Why is this strange painting on the ceiling? And they said, well, they're not quite satanic, but they're kind of in something more on the dark side. So I'll just leave that out there as this story develops. So anyway, she brought the painting home, and they put it up on the wall, and it portrayed a lady with blonde hair sitting on a rocking chair in a white gown. His mom loved the picture, brought it home and found a place to put it, and they hung it on the wall between the upstairs and the downstairs. After that, the painting starts randomly falling off the wall. They checked everything. Structurally, it just keeps falling off. They put it up, and then a couple days later, it would fall down. And then they noticed something else. Now, Jay tells me this place was very echoey. So if something happened downstairs, you could hear upstairs. But they noticed after one particular day that this fell off, it was at a party, they put it back up, and a few days later, they were upstairs. And in the middle of the night, about 2 or 3 a.m., they would hear a woman downstairs crying softly. And they really didn't know what it was because it made no sense. There was nobody downstairs, but they kept hearing this. And what's really kind of scary is over the course of several nights, it keeps happening. And over the course of a couple of weeks, it starts getting louder every night and louder and louder. And then one night it just went explosive. Jay said it was so loud you could literally feel the crying through the walls, like a woman was just crying and bawling her eyes out. Remember that picture, by the way. There was a woman in the picture. It got so bad that the mom and her friend that they lived with took action, said, we're going to take the kids. So they took all the kids out of the room and said, we're leaving. So they go downstairs, they go to their car, and they go and they go to their car, and it's around a community pool, which was right in front of the sliding glass doors in their living room. And they didn't have curtains, so you could see right inside the apartment. And when they got into the car, they could see right through their own glass windows. And then that's when they freaked out, because when they looked inside the apartment, guess what they saw? There was a lady with a white gown sitting on their rocking chair in the living room rocking. the woman was the figure in the painting. His mom and her friend started to scream, "Oh my God!" And they remember everybody trying to get the one mom trying to get the keys in ignition, and she couldn't do it, but they did get going. They left. They never came back. And Jay doesn't know exactly what happened with the painting. He said, "It's hard for me to talk about it even now. Just remembering that incident is scary as hell."
Wow.
So, quite a story.
It turns out that Wes Craven was inspired by a group of Cambodian immigrants that all died while having nightmares.
Well, there you go. There you go. And thank you for, I should have, that was 6 months ago. I should have researched him. So thank you.
That's
thank
creepy. Like a whole bunch of them died because of the nightmares?
Yeah, it says a group.
Wow.
A group is more than a few, I would say.
Yeah, that's freaky.
Yeah,
But,
and it's like a collective consciousness.
Back in the days, fucking who knows, that could have just been some bullshit for killing off a boatload of, you know what I mean? Like, you never know. Back in the day, there was a lot of shady stuff going on.
You never know. That's the kind of a lame excuse.
I don't know. They have nightmare. I don't know.
They all died in their sleep.
They had a nightmare or something.
Yeah, it's but again, you had asked before, I think, about DNA. Is that creative? But that gets into the point of, as you said, tulpas, and also to the point, do we create things ourselves? You know, and I don't know this for a fact, but the sightings, for example, of the prototypical alien with the bug eyes and the egg head,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm sure that increased after something like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So my question is, do we create the reality? Or in the case of aliens, do they reflect what we think we're supposed to see? You know, in the 50s, a lot of the reports are blonde-haired, blue-eyed aliens, George Adamski, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it switches over to the gray. Is it because the aliens are just projecting to us what we think we should see? I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, yeah, and it also can go for UFO sightings, too, how they always stay sort of one step ahead of our current technology, in a way, as far as perception goes.
Yeah. I think it's, it's mind-numbing, because if you think about all the implications of all this stuff, it can keep you up at night.
What do you think? What do you think of the types of things like the secret space program and some of the stuff that guys like Richard Dolan talk about?
I think there's and Richard's been on a couple of the shows. He's a good guy to talk to. Interesting guy. I think that I think a lot of stuff goes on. I mean, if you look at the black budgets, and I don't know the specific details of the numbers, but there's huge sections, huge swaths of the military budgets and things like that in the U.S. that are not accounted for, that even people in Congress don't know what's going on. And I have to believe there's a lot of stuff that we don't know about things that are flying up there. And I think that it's certainly possible that, you know, some UFO sightings are military craft, but I certainly don't think that all of them are. I certainly think that could be some. It's interesting. I had Annie Jacobson on the show a couple of years ago. She did that big book on Area 51, and I can't remember the exact quote, but she was talking to someone who had inside knowledge, who had worked at Groom Lake or one of these places, Area 51. And she said, I know you can't tell me a lot, but is, you know, if I'm talking about this plate, is like the secrecy behind this is as big as this crouton, is as big as the plate? And he said, oh no, my dear, it's as big as the table.
That's a good analogy.
I can't remember the exact quotes. I hope I'm not misquoting her, but the idea is that there's a hell of a lot of stuff that it's a big story. And it's really, and she had, I'm not gonna spoil her book for people, but she had a crazy theory at the end of that book about what Roswell was. I mean, it was even crazier than aliens. And I won't even say what it was, but I'm like, I'm not buying that. But she claims that there was a terrestrial explanation, but it was such a crazy explanation that I'm like, nah, I don't think so. But it was very interesting. And she, you know, she's a pretty mainstream person, LA Times, and she's written a lot of a lot of considered serious stuff.
Yeah.
And doesn't strike me in any way as a kook. And she had a crazy theory for Roswell, which I'd never heard before, and would almost, as I said, almost be more incredible than aliens.
Yeah. Did she come out with another book just recently? I thought I heard something about that.
I'll have to take a look. I'm not aware if
I'm not sure.
If she did and it's in this area, I'd like to talk to her again because she was fascinating. It took me a while to get her, but once I did, it was a great discussion.
Have you heard of, or have you thought about putting your books on audiobook at all? Like your Campfire ones? Like you could even narrate it yourself. You got a pretty good voice.
Well, what I kind of thought was it kind of already is an audiobook.
Yeah, kind of.
In a way.
Kind of.
I thought about that. I literally, because the thing is that what I do with these books is I take the stories. I don't change any of, well, the first book was basically almost verbatim.
Right.
Of calls. And I got a lot of complaints. People said, well, it's not edited very much. And the whole point was not to edit it because I didn't want to change what people said. The second book, I didn't change the facts. I just tried to word them a little more eloquently and got much better reaction. So I think I'm going to stick with the same model. But I mean, the thing is that if people want to, and the other thing that I did for this book is, if you buy the book, I actually made a special podcast that's only available to people who buy the book that they can download that has my favorite, I forget if it's 5 or 10 top stories.
Oh,
and basically
cool.
what I did is I took those 5 stories and I edited them together and did like almost a Casey Kasem kind of top 40 countdown.
That's awesome.
And now, keep your feet on the ground and your head in the stars. And now we've got the #1 Campfire story of 2013. But anyway, kind of like that without the schlocky voice. Although Casey Kasem, awesome. Hey, Scooby-Doo, what can you say? Or Zoink Scoob-G. No, but anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent here.
That book did really well on, isn't it?
Yeah.
The #1
it was
supernatural book or something?
Yeah, it was the #1 Kindle supernatural book for much of the fall, which
great.
I thought was pretty darn cool.
And
it's funny, I got to say this, and this is not to knock I'm a little bit all over the place now, so I apologize. But
no, it's
not to in any way belittle or begrudge my publisher in my first book. They're nice people, and I still do a lot of interviews with a lot of their authors, and they were good to work with. But I found doing my own book was very liberating. It did better. Reached a wider audience. I got to be on Coast to Coast AM. I sold a lot more books. I was able to price the Kindle book cheaply at $2.99 in the States. And similar pricing in Canada, too. Very economically, so more people could buy it. I don't really think, personally, I don't think pricing a book, the Kindle version, at essentially the same price as the print version is really fair. I think, if you want print, you should pay a premium, but if you're just getting the bits, why not make it affordable? And I've had sales where I've even had 99 cents. And having that marketing flexibility, having the flexibility of, and they didn't really dictate what I had to do in the book, so I don't want to say that, but having the marketing flexibility, pricing flexibility. And, when you publish a book, you have to get it done so far ahead of when it's released. Right. Whereas with this book, I finished it, and within a month I had it on Amazon. And it's been great for me. I love self-publishing. My thing is that I will self-publish this, but only in the way that it has to be indistinguishable from a book that's sold in a bookstore. In other words, a lot of self-published books, you can take a look at them and say, that is self-published. My book, not to toot my own horn, but I think you look at my book and you say, who published this? And that was really important to me to have a good look. So I hired a professional cover artist for the print version. I hired a person who lays out books for book companies. So other than having a name on there, other than my own, it was essentially everything in there was, and it was edited. So everything was done professionally. I just paid for all of that up front, and then I've more than made it back. It's been good. But another important thing, other than making money on books or extending the brand, which is all good stuff from a business perspective. A lot of people, you said before, a lot of people don't know what podcasts are, but everybody knows what a book is. So I would hope so.
Yeah.
So my thought was this would be a great way to get some of these stories out there. Maybe people will never listen to a podcast.
Ah, yeah, okay.
And I think that's been a good thing too. And I know, people have called in Campfire and said, I found out about your podcast through your book. So it's really been a very cool thing.
Good idea.
Reading books could be a dying art.
Maybe reading paper books, but I do think, there's always, for example, I look at my one daughter is just a voracious reader. She reads more, and I was a pretty strong reader when I was young, but she blows me out of the water. So I have hope for future generations. I think people will continue to read. I hope, unless we become, what was that movie, Idiocracy?
That's gold. That's
which
so
I think sometimes
that's a coin toss.
Yeah. Sometimes when you look, that could happen too. If we have too much. I'll tell you. Do you guys have the Real Housewives up there? Do you guys have that?
I don't. Probably.
Well, if you do, I feel sorry for you. My wife watches, and my wife's a very intelligent woman. She has a master's degree. That doesn't mean you're necessarily intelligent, but she happens to be intelligent. And but she likes these Kardashian type reality series. And I'm like, and this is a total
in a car crash way, or
I'm like, I don't know. I don't get it. These women are arguing at each other. I mean, it's just, why would you watch this?
I love that
why
shit.
Would you? Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I just thought, why would you watch this? Why don't you watch House of Cards,
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I actually, I don't really watch. I use my Netflix, and I'd say 90% of what I'm watching these days, other than my hockey games, is through the internet in some way, shape, or form.
Congratulations on the Olympic medal.
Yeah, you had to get up at 5 a.m. to watch it.
Well, the thing is that, and this is interesting, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I used to be, I'm 44, so I'm getting on in years. So I'm a product of the Cold War era when we all thought that the Soviets were going to nuke us.
Yeah.
But even in watching the Olympics, I noticed that since I've started podcasting and since the internet, I am far less parochial. Let's say 25 years ago, and please don't take offense, and the U.S. is playing Canada, and the U.S. loses, which, if we're talking hockey, really, Canada should win.
Yeah.
But come on. But anyway, first I'd be like, damn those Canadians. But now I'm like, good for them. They deserve to win hockey.
That's cool.
No, but I think that the internet has changed us, or it's changed me. I know I'm far less, certainly I'm patriotic. I mean, America has its share of problems, but I still think it's a great country, and I'm very proud to be an American. But I'm not like, Americans good, Russians bad.
Yeah, it's blurred the borders for sure.
Although, I'm not exactly a big fan of Vladimir Putin. But you know what I'm saying? The people are generally people, and just with the different political leadership. Of course, I still believe there are good guys out there and there are bad guys. But I'm far more open to people from other countries, and I think it's such a cool thing. I think it's done more than 1,000 years of diplomacy. The internet has done more than 1,000 years of diplomacy to bring people together.
Yeah, we've talked about that exact thing with other podcasters on this podcast before.
Is there any feeling in this, like I've heard some people talking about how some people are scared we might be, mostly the States, but like how that West and East thing might be rumbling back up again?
Oh, personally,
and now with Czechoslovakia
the
Ukraine thing happening.
Oh, I am yes, I am worried about that. I'm worried about a new Cold War, whether it's between the U.S. and Russia or U.S. and China. But those are the leaders. I think that in the past you had the leadership at each other's throat, and then you also had the people hating each other because they have been told to hate each other. Even if, for example, Soviet Russia. Boy, that really sounds old. But if you hated the system, communism, which I personally think is an awful system, if you hated that system, I totally get that. But I think we as Americans also, I hate to say this, hated Russians because we thought that, Russians had horns coming out of their head. I think the difference is now that hopefully we're able to delineate that we may dislike a particular system or a particular leadership, and we may think, Vladimir Putin, electing himself into perpetual presidency is a bad thing, that we don't think Russians themselves are bad people because they're Russian and happen to have a lousy leader. Just as I hope that people don't necessarily think Americans are bad people because we may have our share of poor leaders. So I think the difference is that, I think there's totally the possibility, as much as ever, for the systems and the politicians to clash and bring us all into it. I still think that's a possibility. I think people too often, and this has nothing to do with the paranormal, but too often people forget that there are all of these nuclear weapons. And what is the phrase? Therefore, by the grace of God, we're so fortunate that other than immediately after Second World War.
And the internet could even turn out to save the day there again, right? Like you just seen like Syria almost pulled off because of extreme public outcry. Right. And
and the thing is that I still think, though, there is a danger that, India gets mad at Pakistan, or there's some precipitous thing in the Middle East between something like Iran and Israel or something, and, the nuclear birds start flying. So I think that I always have that, and maybe that's just a product of my upbringing. We always heard, the missiles could be coming in 15 minutes. There was an old American movie in the 80s, became a huge deal called The Day After, that talked about the aftermath of a nuclear war. Yeah. And I think people of my age, most of us still remember all of that stuff, where younger people might not remember that. So I always have that in the back of my mind. I think that's a really scary thing. And anything that could destabilize those kind of things is particularly scary to me. So I think there could be a new Cold War. I sure hope not.
Yeah, me too. Hopefully we're going the other way. So what do you got coming up in the future, Jim?
Well, I just did, in terms of short term, I just did a show with the folks over at Fate Magazine today, posted on the Paranormal Podcast feed. You can find that over at jimharold.com. If you go over there, you can find usually about 90 days of free content for the Paranormal Podcast. We did a show last week with Jason Martell about ancient aliens.
I heard that. It was great.
Thank you. And we have more fun coming up on that show. And then the Campfire comes out every week, and we have a lot of spooky stories to share on that as always, and that'll be coming out probably tomorrow or Thursday. And then we also have our weekly free newsletter. I always like to send out a free newsletter to folks every week. And if folks want to pick up on that, it's absolutely free. It's over at jimharold.com. That's jimharold.com. And I'm also on Facebook and Twitter under the name Jim Harold. And you can connect with me there as well.
Well, Jim, it's been a great chat. We really want to thank you for coming on the show at Grimerica.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. I feel like I kind of rambled.
No, not at all. It was great.
Geopolitics to skepticism, to actually a couple of ghost stories, or spooky stories at least. So it's been a lot of fun. I'd love to do it again. And, the one thing that I've been excited to see is all the great new podcasts coming out. And you guys are certainly in that category. So congratulations. You got great sound and get great guests, and continued success. And I hope to see you grow for many years to come.
Thanks a lot, Jim. That means a lot. And we'll make sure we link to your website and to your shows and all that in our show notes and in the post, so that, like I say, there might be one or two of our audience that hasn't heard of you yet. So we'll make sure they check you out.
There's a lot more people that haven't heard of me than have heard of me. By the way, one last thing. Also, they can pick up Jim Harold's Campfire 2 over at Amazon.com if they're on the U.S. side, or Amazon.ca if they're in Canada. And I know it's $2.99 in the States, and I believe it's comparable pricing over in Canada for the Kindle edition. So 70 stories, it's less than a nickel a story, I think, if my third grade math works out. So we think it's a good deal.
That's a good deal. And hey, are you going to be at Paradigm 2014 this year?
I'm still planning the schedule.
Okay.
Not exactly sure, but I tell you, that was a great conference for me, and if I can, I will.
Well, we'll probably be there, so hopefully we'll see you there.
Cool. Maybe we can do it like a joint show or something.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, round table, as we like to call it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, thanks a lot, guys.
And that was our chat with Jim Harold. What'd you think, Darren?
Yeah, Jim, nice guy, super nice guy. I gotta say, one thing I do gotta say is I've seen his. He's one guy who the first time I ever heard his voice, like I had heard his voice and then I seen his picture, it surprised me.
It did or it didn't?
It did.
It did?
One of those guys who's just for some reason with certain people, I find that their voice doesn't, their voice and their face don't match up to me.
And with his, it did?
And his was one of those people that didn't. I was like,
oh,
wow.
Oh,
weird.
yeah, none of them do, really.
Sometimes they do.
Sometimes?
Yeah, you sound just like you look.
I remember in my old job, I was dealing with this woman down in California, and she had the sexiest voice. Like, I am talking sultry, sexy, and I'm thinking, what does this woman look like? Like, it's usually, then you meet the person and they're like, ooh, they're totally not like their voice. And she came up to see me with the little company I worked for, and holy fuck, she was like a 10 knockout. It was unreal. So it was finally somebody that did match their voice.
Once again, that brings me back to the movie Her and you falling in love with your phone eventually. You heard it here first. No,
Anyways,
that was great. He's got good books and he tells great stories, and just one of those guys that's fun to talk to.
Yeah, and you know what I like is he's one of these guys that's inspiring because he's followed his passion, right? He's taken what he knows about a certain thing and some technical expertise, and he's created this whole thing, right, for himself. This whole business around talking to people about the paranormal and stuff. So it's inspiring to me.
Yeah,
and
it's good for
great.
him.
Yeah, it was great to meet him in person too, and he was very, very friendly, easy to talk to, and yeah, man, I love it. That's part of the joy of doing this.
Yeah, hopefully we can have him on again down the road. Who do we got next? Next episode is going to be
Daniel Estulin.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Daniel
Estulin. Daniel Estulin. Oh, that's a gooder.
And then we got an episode in the canon now, or an interview with the global cooling scientist, Dr. Don Easterbrook.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how we're going to work that into the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all good. We got lots coming up.
Yeah, it's all good. We booked, I don't know, have we mentioned we got Robert Schock coming up? I can't remember, but send questions for him. He's coming up in about a month. Terry Tabando is next week.
Yeah, Vancouver CSETI guy.
Tom Roberts. Psychedelic dude.
Oh, right.
He's the 25th of March. Oh yeah, the one thing we do got to talk about before we bust out of here is Passport to Grimerica episode March 29th. I think we're gonna kind of be around most of the day, so we can jump in. We got people all over the world, kind of in different time zones to accommodate. So we're just gonna kind of hang out. We got an interview that day, probably have a barbecue, and I think we got room for 3 or 4 more for sure.
Yeah, that'll be great.
So tweet us, email us, And let us know if you want to come on.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's talk about the emails. My email is graham@grimerica.com. Graham.
Yeah, and I'm Darren at Grimerica.com, and there's always feedback at Grimerica.ca.
And the P.O. box, too. So
Yeah,
go to the
P.O. box, yeah, Grimerica.ca/contact. Of course, the money bombs, Grimerica.ca/moneybomb. I think that's about it.
Right on, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, guys, thanks for listening. As usual, you'll find links to everything we talked about in the show notes and all the music you heard as well. So thanks, Graham. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.